So LinkedIn has a culture of sharing. It has a culture of transforming people, and in doing so, we wanted to make sure that the knowledge that was stuck in all the engineers' heads was able to be shared with other engineers. So we developed a program called Tech Talks, and this is about actually it was 10 years ago. And so we had an engineer who created these Tech Talks, and basically it was a sign up sheet. Anybody could sign up and do a Tech Talk. They were on Mondays and Wednesdays from 12 to 1, and they pretty much were in the headquartered office here in the Bay Area. So it was very central to the engineering team that was here in the Bay Area. Now, 9 years ago, that was where all the engineers were. So 9 or 10 years ago, we had a smaller engineering team, and we had everybody was pretty much here in the Bay Area. But over time, we've obviously expanded. So now we have, over 6,000 engineers worldwide. So the program was really struggling to basically work for everybody, right? So we were getting lower and lower attendance that was happening, and the satisfaction level was going down significantly. So, we really needed to take a second look at this. And the one engineer who was actually managing this whole piece was ready to move on to something else. So we were shifting this program into the training team. So it was not in the training team originally, but we were migrating it into the training team. So we had to kind of step back and take a look and see how we could possibly make this program work for all of engineering.
Got it. Yeah, that's it's often how things start, grassroots, and then it's hard to scale them and sustain them. Okay, that's really really interesting. So can you tell us a bit about sort of how how did this transfer into your team? What was the thing that you were actually trying to solve for? Like, how did you think about the priorities? Like, did you need some sort of buy-in or alignment from various stakeholders, including this engineer who sort of got us off the ground? If you can just sort of give us a little bit of like, how did this solution start to materialize?
Yeah, so luckily Tech Talks are well supported by upper management. So the concept of Tech Talks was actually not hard for us to continue to bring forward. But our leaders were really concerned about the fact that, it really didn't seem like it was working. So we actually polled the engineers. We were asking them questions like, why are you not attending? What's going on? And when we started asking questions, we found out that only that 73% were saying that it's not fitting, it doesn't fit in my schedule, right? I don't have lunchtime on Mondays and Wednesdays to go to these things, right?
Mhm.
And then 68% weren't even aware of what was available. So we had a big disconnect on the advertising of these things and how making engineers aware that these talks were available for them to go to. So that's a pretty high percentage that didn't even really know that they existed. And then the other thing that we were running into was relevance. So originally, it's grassroots and anybody could sign up. So there were quite a few months in a row where the tech talks would be themed a certain way that was only relevant to a small group of engineers. So we really needed to find a way to make sure that the tech talks were more well-rounded and could accommodate the different types of engineers and what they were interested in. So those were kind of the things we were looking at, were availability, awareness, and relevance to kind of improve them. Another factor we were getting involved in was quality. This is engineers that are presenting this material to other engineers. Not all engineers know how to present material. So people were coming and excited about the topic and then left sad because they really didn't get anything out of it. So quality was another factor that we were interested in investigating and looking deeper into.
So when you're getting started with sort of solutioning for this, were you trying to tackle all of these things at once, like the lack of time, the relevance, the quality, the awareness, or were some of these things more important than others?
Actually, we kind of had to take a holistic look at it. All of these things play into each other, right? So awareness was pretty easy. That's basically advertising and getting that piece out of it. But if I advertise to people something that they're not interested in, that's not going to help my attendance, right? So they all do blend together. They really do have to be looked at holistically to be able to solve the problem. The other facet that goes on with this is scalability. So, this was a one man job and it was taking 30% of that person's time, right? And my team didn't have the ability to take on that 30% of workload, right? So we also had to factor in scalability into this. How can we make a program that we do not have to be the total managers of, and administrate the whole thing? So all of those pieces together, we had to really look at them holistically. Now, once we came up with a solution, then we implemented them in phases. But to come up with that solution, we had to look at all of them.
And who did you partner with? Like, obviously, I love how you are like very data driven. So you have like very, high degree of data to sort of back up these challenges. But like at the same time, you had to work with people and sort of presumably build relationships with folks in engineering. How did that look like for you?
Yeah, so a lot of that had to do with the program that was put together. As we started to look at this, we really wanted to make sure that it was a worldwide program. And I am lucky enough to have several people on my team that are excellent at building relationships. And they were able to reach out to different groups, different regions, different locations, and find people that were willing to take this on. Um, when we look at the solution that we put together, you'll see it's actually a multi-tiered solution that rolls out regionally, locally, based on organizations and things like that. So I was lucky enough that we actually have some excellent relation builders in my team that were able to go out and talk to these people and find people that were interested. The other thing I'm really lucky is that the culture that we are in is again, it's a helping culture, it's a sharing culture, and that really makes it easy for me to find this. And when I say this is part of our culture, this is part of their performance review. So as an evaluation on performance, you have to show that you are actually giving back to engineering. You are actually leading and mentoring and sharing with other people. So it is built into our world, which is a huge advantage that I have.
That's awesome. Like it sounds like you really had a solid foundation. Like culture is definitely one of the biggest sort of challenges in the space. Once you have that, then it becomes a little, much easier. So can you tell us a bit about that solution? Like, so what did that look like? What was the time frame? What were the moving pieces? And maybe paint a picture for us of the specifics as much as you can get into them.
Yeah, so first thing we did was starting to look at the attendance and awareness piece of this. And so we really did want to open this up to be more of a worldwide, company-wide type of events and things like that. So we were looking at different times, different locations, because remember, originally it was Mondays and Wednesdays at lunchtime, which is, not awesome. So we started looking at different times and different locations to run these events. We also needed to look at discoverability. Originally, the way people found out about events was through a distribution list, and you had to know to sign up for the distribution list. So if you didn't know to sign up, you didn't get on the list, which means you didn't get the advertising. So we switched the advertising to be company wide, which was a huge plus right there, just making sure that all of engineering got the notifications that these events were happening. So that helped with our attendance significantly.
Hmm.
The other thing we did was we wanted to increase the level of presenters. So initially it was a lot of just regular engineers that were actually delivering these presentations, and those are important, but we also wanted to get some directors and senior staff, senior level people involved in delivering for these, so that we could get larger audiences and people would be more excited about the topics and things like that. So we did start to look at which directors or which senior staff type people, senior managers might be interested in presenting, and started reaching out to them to try to plan for topics that they might be interested in presenting.
That's really awesome. And obviously, a lot of folks in those roles tend to also be have natural sort of ability to present. How about generally quality? Like, what are the kinds of other things you've done in order to address the quality concerns?
Yeah, so for quality, we really started to put together some documentation and training type of things and templates. So we have guides for presenters and hosts. We have templates that people can use when putting together their presentations so that they're a little bit more engaging. We also have some basic training that's been, we've started to put together that teaches about presenting and engaging your audience and all that kind of stuff. So there's some great things on LinkedIn Learning that you can pull in. So we pulled some of those in and are leveraging stuff we already have. The other thing was connecting or gathering feedback. So
Hmm.
in the previous iteration, there was no attendance tracking and there was no feedback. And so we've also implemented a survey so we could get feedback and then be able to put that back right into the hands of the presenter so they can see where they can improve and what they can do better.
Got it. I mean, it sounded like you're describing all of these things, and it's really awesome. Is there anything you'd be able to show us, like in terms of screenshots or anything that sort of better helps us visualize the solution you've come up with?
Yeah, let me go ahead and share and I can show you the model that we put together. There we go. So this is the model that we put together to be able to scale this program out to the entire company. And so one of the things we wanted to do was to make sure that we weren't running too many tech talks too frequently. That was another thing that was going on. They were like, there's so many, I just can't even keep track, right? So we wanted to make sure that what we were offering was viable, was relevant, and that they weren't overwhelming people's schedules. So we broke things down into different series, different types of tech talks. So we have the Inge org, which would be applicable to the entire organization. And we only run those several, one sort of so many per month. And my team actually hosts those directly. And that's where we're trying to get people like the directors and senior management to come in and talk about, scaling stories or leadership series and things like that. So we're trying to have that type of a presentation for those. But then we moved into lower level things like the team series. So we have 13 core teams that are part of engineering. And these would be things like the data team or the SRE team, they're more around function or product line. So we want the teams themselves to actually put on a tech talk once a month. And we have advisors for each of those teams that help us with hosting that and also with procuring speakers. So they are actually going out and trying to gather speakers and get those presentations put together. They can then manage those themselves. So we don't have to manage them. We support the advisors and the advisors then put together all those tech talks. From there, we also wanted to have things that were more regional, that are related to things going on in that particular office. And so that's where we are bringing on ambassadors for each of the different locations. And again, they're just running one tech talk a month. So it's not a huge overhead. We're not asking for, once a week. It's just once a month, put on some kind of event that would be appropriate for your office, the engineers that are in your office that would relate to that. So we are in the process now. We're still onboarding a lot of this. This program has been 1 year. We've just made our 1 year mark. It's so exciting. So we're still onboarding some of this stuff. So we have right now the San Francisco office and the Bangalore office are online. We've just brought on the Southern California, Capitanero. I cannot say that location, but you guys know Southern California. We've just brought them on and started working with them, and China as well. We've just brought China on as well. So those locations are just coming on board for us.
Hmm.
And then, by creating these different series, we've managed to improve the relevancy because we've gotten topics that are important to the engineers and they're more diverse. So we're getting a lot of more variety of it. And we've also been able to scale it. So now my team supports the advisors and the ambassadors, and then the Eng org tech talks is what we do. So it makes it very scalable.
Awesome. I mean, obviously, it seems like you've scaled your team through these advisors and ambassadors. Like it sounds amazing that you've been able to sort of grow the size of your team almost virtually. What about some of the sort of challenges on like the logistics and on the sort of just the advertising and feedback collection and whatnot? Like, how did
Mhm.
you go after solving those?
So that's where we decided to bring in a piece of software for that. And it happened to be Plus Plus that we brought in, but we wanted to make sure that the everything was very discoverable. We wanted to make sure that things were very easy for the ambassadors and the advisors to create. So they actually add in the tech talks into the system. They manage all that themselves, the registrations, the communications happen automatically through the system. So, we really wanted to make sure that we found something that was easy so my team could easily hand this over to somebody else to do. So we happen to use Plus Plus for this. It's easy for us to create. We pre-created these different event types so that the organizers, the advisors, and the ambassadors just have to take the event type, which is basically a template for them to work with, and then they can use that to create the events. The
Hmm.
events are really easy for them to put in, and because they are, there's a search in here and everything, it's really easy for everybody to find. So this is part of our discovery and part of our way of maintaining pieces. The other thing that we do is we have a newsletter that goes out. We have newsletters that are from the training team, and then we also have what we call persona level newsletters, and in each of those newsletters we also advertise the tech talks that are coming. And then the other way that we do this is the old fashioned way, because the engineers were so used to receiving email about the events, we still send calendar invites for each event to all of engineering. And that way they can read the descriptions and everything on here and decide if they want to do it. They just can accept it into their calendar and it marks their calendar so then they can attend.
That's really awesome. And are you able to recruit some of those ambassadors and advisors to help with the marketing, or is that mostly on your team?
No, they actually do the marketing themselves. That's what I was saying with the persona or the
I
the
see.
the org pieces. Those are their newsletters and they're being advertised through their newsletters.
That's awesome. Cool. So before we sort of start moving towards exploring the results of this, is there anything else that's part of the solution that you didn't anticipate was going to be needed, but you ended up developing and helped sort of put all the pieces together nice and better?
I think some of the stuff that yeah, we basically had to create a guide for the ambassadors and for the advisors on how this worked, and we had a kickoff meeting with them so that my coordinator who manages all of this now, he's has it all set up to where he can do a kickoff meeting with the advisor and hands over all the pieces that they need to be able to manage all this. So we did put together all the materials and everything that they would need to manage everything,
Hmm.
even communication templates and stuff like that. So they wouldn't even have to think about what the email should look like. We gave them, they could use a template and then they can modify it as they see fit if they prefer to do that. So we tried to hand off as many helpful items to the ambassadors and the advisors as we could come up with.
And that's amazing. Was there a particular sort of sales pitch or like an elevator pitch that you used to recruit these folks into the program? Like, ultimately, what's in it for them? It sounds like you're giving them a lot of tools, but like it's still an extra responsibility on their part.
It definitely is an extra responsibility on their part. And again, remember, we have this culture of volunteering. So it is finding the right person, right?
Hmm.
So looking at office managers or looking at assistants to office managers or looking at persona owners or leads to the organization, the different team, things like that. Those were all people that we reached out to ask if they were interested in, and if they weren't interested, did you know anybody else who might be interested? That we're always expanding this pool because people's schedules change and things like that. So even though they have onboarded as an ambassador, they may have gone out on maternity leave or they may have moved on to another project and now we need to find a replacement. So we are constantly increasing that pool size so that we have backups on backups. So it's not just one person that's the advanced ambassador or one person advisor. We have a pool of people we can pull from.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. Can you sort of give us a little bit of what did this all amount to, right? Like, what are some of the, when this, as you said, it's been about a year since, is that, if I'm remembering
Yeah,
correctly?
it's yeah.
Like, what are the highlights? Like, what are the things that you were most proud of, and what do you see as that sort of impact on the organization and on your team?
So one of the things that we are most proud of is the attendance and and the happiness. Basically, we were to the point in the old system that, we were struggling to get 20 people to attend, literally struggling. And now, we have an average of about 100 people per event. And we have some huge events. We've had 5 different director senior level presentations. Each one of them has had well over 400 people attending. Our biggest one was actually 645. So we're really excited about that. And, the fact that we're able to find these advisors and these ambassadors, and we're able to roll these things out, and we're adding more and more. We're just really excited about this program and the growth that it's seen in just a 1 year for the things that we've done to it.
That's really amazing. And what was the sort of, how does the organization experience that? Like, did you get any kind of direct feedback from your stakeholders on the success of this program?
So we're actually sending out the same survey again this month. It actually went out this week. So we haven't gotten all the details back from the actual individual engineers, but from the director level, they are very excited. And they're really excited too, because not only can they see, they're more visually involved in seeing what's being offered, but they're also participating in what's
Hmm.
happening. So they're a lot more engaged in this program, and they're really very excited about this program.
That's really cool. And what did your team learn from all of this? Ultimately, it sounds like you have pretty amazing success. I'm sure there were some lessons learned along the way. Is there anything you can share with us, sort of along those lines?
Yeah, I think, well, one of our biggest lessons was things don't always happen in the timeline that you want them to happen in, which, we all know that, right? We ended up launching, soft launching for our 10th anniversary. We really wanted to launch this on time for the 10th anniversary, and we were just a smidge off, but we just faked it anyway. It was our 10th anniversary. Yay, who knew? So, things always slide. The other thing that we learned along the way was people really like to present, and people really do want to learn how to present better. I really thought we were going to get pushback on, you probably want to take this training. You might want to improve your skills. I didn't think, I wasn't sure that people were going to receive that well, and people
Hmm.
have been receiving that well. So I was pretty excited that people were open to improving their skills and going forward. And the other thing that we are learning is that you have to have backup ambassadors and backup advisors, because schedules change, things happen. So that was, that the pooling piece is relatively new.
Hmm.
And we just had one person that went out on maternity leave, and we went, oh, we should have some backups. So that was another learning for us.
And are you like looking to apply some of these learnings to your other programs, like like especially around like this ambassadors and advisors? Like that sounds like really magical. Does that port over to your other efforts?
It does actually. Bringing in the software, bringing in Plus Plus, actually allowed us to open up for more people to be organizers. So as teams bring out new products or new tools for the engineers to use, we're able to onboard them as organizers for them to be able to organize their own training offerings. So we help them develop their training offerings, but then they handle the scheduling and the updates and all that kind of stuff within the system. So basically they're the ambassador of that particular program.
Hmm.
So
Awesome.
it's been really nice to expand that out.
So if there's one thing, if you could go back in time and do it again, is there one thing that you think you would do differently?
One thing we do differently. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't go backwards.
Okay, that's
we
fair.
we learn and move forward. I don't know that there'd be anything that we would do too terribly differently. We we've taken the implementation in phases. So, I think that has been a huge advantage of this. We didn't try to roll out all of the orgs at the same time. We didn't try to roll out all the locations at the same time. We didn't try to change all of the communications at the same time. So I think taking that in phases and doing it over time, I think has been a big advantage for us. Um, Yeah, I
Awesome.
don't know what
Really
we would do
cool.
different.
All right, so thank you. And looking forward, obviously, there's presumably still ways that you can improve this program and apply these learnings to future programs. Like, how do you see the future shaping up for LinkedIn and even independently of this particular initiative, what do you see that's kind of showing up on the horizon that's exciting for you and your team?
So for this program in particular, we are going to be bringing in more external presenters. So not just from our internal resources, but also bringing in people from outside. So we really are focusing on expanding that option and bringing in more and more people. And again, continuing to get more and more directors and senior level management involved in this program for presenting. Overall, for our team, we are, looking at how we can expand. We're a tiny team, a small team for, trying to support 7,000 engineers. So we're putting together more and more programs around self-service or, us partnering with the teams instead of us doing everything in order to make this more scalable so that other teams can basically handle their offerings instead of us having to handle everything. And then, of course, the other thing we're working on, which I'm sure everybody is working on, is how to make your content really engaging for a virtual or work from home environment. So, we've had moved all of our content to be virtual, but it's not as engaging as we would like it to be. So we're in the process now of reevaluating, what can be self-paced, what can have more engagement, what kind of engagement would that look like, just to, build this further, because no matter what, we're never going back to full instructor led. We're going to be in some kind of blended mode.
Hmm.
So, those are some of the things we're looking at right now.
Awesome, thank you. And with that, I want to first of all really thank you for taking us through this journey of yours. Sounds like it's been super exciting, and I'm really amazed at the results that you've been able to attain. We already have a question for Jasmine, and I'll sort of pass that on to you in a moment. But I just want to invite you can probably stop presenting, Sandy, if you'd like. But I will invite everyone else. If you have questions for Sandy, please jot them down in chat, and I will direct them at Sandy. I'm sure some of the questions will probably be similar. So this will give us a good way to aggregate them. So the first question from Jasmine from Netflix is, um, hey, do you record these Tech Talk events? How do you host them? How do you share them? Does LinkedIn Learning factor into some of this? How do you make them discoverable?
We do. So what we do is in PlusPlus, we advertise a live event and then we record the live event because not everybody can come. And then we do host them onto LinkedIn Learning, and then we end up linking to them in PlusPlus as well, so that you can find them in both places through PlusPlus or through LinkedIn Learning. But we definitely record them and we definitely throw them on LinkedIn Learning.
Awesome, thank you. So Mila asked, and by the way, feel free to pose the questions for everyone in the chat. Mila asks, what aspects of Tech Talks was most convincing to those managers that didn't get on board right away, and what were some of the hurdles you might have encountered with sort of working with those stakeholders?
So some of the hurdles that we ran into, of course, engineers have no time for training. So making sure that managers were open to, giving them time, giving them the space to take the sessions. We try to keep the sessions to 1 hour. Every once in a while they go to 90 minutes, but it's usually easier for engineers to get away for an hour than it is for a half day or a whole day type of a session. So we've even had some tech talks that have been like part one, part two, part three.
Hmm.
But basically it's keeping those tech talks short so that managers can easily accommodate those in the engineering schedule. Um,
Got it.
for management, they've really been on board with this because it's been around, it's been part of our world for 10 years. So they really like the concept and they're actually quite happy with the changes that we've made. So we didn't have to really get too much buy-in from that. It really was time.
Awesome. And actually on that note, I am curious, like you mentioned you had these conference like events with 600 plus attendees. Like what was it like to put one of those on, like from just a sheet that seems insane, the scale. Did that involve like a different kind of approach, or was it just managed in the same way as everything else?
We pretty much manage it in the same way as everything else. The only thing that's really different is the tool that we use for that type of an event versus a regular Zoom. We technically do that more as a virtual event, to where everybody comes in muted, and then they're listening, and if they want to ask questions they can put it in the chat. Whereas in a regular tech talk we do that in more of a interactive environment, to where it's open for anybody to unmute themselves and ask questions at any time. So that was the only big difference, is just the platform that we use to deliver it.
Hmm.
Those topics that the directors are doing are such broad topics. They're about leadership. They're about, here's how I got to be the director, right? So how did I get from a regular engineer to being a director? What were some of the lessons I learned along the way? I mean, they're nice big topics that appeal to a lot of people.
That sounds very interesting. And just you again, for everyone else on the call, feel free to shoot your questions on the chat. I do have another question for you, Sandy. Is like, what are the how do you, if you think of it as like the pie chart, I guess, what percentage of talks tend to be more on that kind of career development side? What percentage are maybe highly technical? And then where, what is the rest? Like, I'm just sort of curious to better understand the kinds of things that get discussed.
That is a great question. I don't know that I've ever looked at the percentages between them, but the
Roughly.
majority of our talks are technical talks. The majority of them are. Um, and a lot of it has to do with, new technologies that we're looking at, or new tools that are being created, or different ways of looking at stuff. But we do have, I'd say, probably at least 10% that is more soft skills. One of the ones we just ran was imposter syndrome, and that actually had 174 people who attended, right? And so, how to deal with imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
So we do have soft skills and things like that we're offering, but I'd say that's probably about 10. It's not a big chunk of what we're offering. Nearly everything is technical.
That's really interesting. Cool. So Heidi from Shopify has I think, couple of questions or comments. First, it's, she's saying that it's an impressive program, and she's thanking you for sharing it. But um, question is about measuring success beyond just attendance. Like, what are the things that you track, and also what kind of tools do you use in assessing quality or value, if you will, impact of this?
Yeah, so right now we're using a NPS. So we have a after event survey where we actually ask them, how much did this talk contribute to your productivity and knowledge? And so that's one of the questions that's on there. And then the other one was, how effective was the speaker? So that's the two main questions that we ask in the after event survey. And then we have a annual survey that goes out, which I was just saying we're literally releasing this week, that goes back and asks some of the same questions we asked before we started this program, like how aware are you on this program? How many have you attended? Do you like the timing of them? Like, all those type of questions of just asking, about the program itself.
Got it. And Heidi did have another question, which was about gaps are there unanswered questions you're looking to explore around impact beyond what you're able to measure today?
Yeah, so one of the things that we are working on right now at LinkedIn is to look at information from a persona perspective. We've been looking at information all this time more from a tooling perspective, and a tool can be used by several different personas. A persona is basically a description of a work, the work that you do, right? So you
Hmm.
might have a UI person, you might have an AI person, you might have an API person. Those are all different personas. Those people have workflows and they have different actions and tasks. So we're starting to look at all of our material from that perspective, so we can see where the gaps are in our material. Because we can say all day, look, we have this awesome documentation for this particular tool and it looks great, but when the persona actually tries to use it, it doesn't have the information they specifically need for their particular task, right?
Hmm.
So that's where we're kind of re-looking. So that's some of the stuff we're evaluating too with the tech talks is, do these apply to specific personas? Are we missing any personas? Are we missing any actions or events that they don't have information on or they would like more information on? So that's one of the aspects that we're looking at as well.
Got it. I have another question of mine, just quickly. You mentioned external speakers, like bringing in more of those. Like, what motivated that, and is there a particular approach you're thinking about to actually make that happen?
Well, we've always had external speakers as part of the Tech Talk program that they've been very specific to, I think we need to bring this framework or language or whatever into LinkedIn. So let's bring some presenters in so people can start hearing about it. So it's been about new technology or new things that we want to bring in. What we'd like to do is also bring in people that just have different ideas, different things that may not be LinkedIn related, but might be interesting to LinkedIn engineers to hear about, brand new stuff that, is cutting edge or this just different than what we are currently looking at in hopes of expanding our creativity, right? That's the whole point is the more you're aware of, the more you're open to seeing other stuff, the more creative you become. So we're kind of challenging ourselves to find these new things and bring them in for the engineers to see.
Got it. That's awesome. And Yvonne had a question around how can employees ask for specific topics to be covered in these presentations? Can they request essentially tech talks?
They can. So not only in the PlusPlus system can they look at the series and they can request a new series topic, but we also have a Confluence, a wiki page that people can go to as well and just post requests into there as well. So we definitely do that, and that's where the ambassadors and the advisors come in because they'll look at those and then try to find people to present for those.
That's really cool. Awesome. I'm still gonna, again say to everyone else, if there are additional questions, please feel free to post them on the chat. I have another question of mine is if like you mentioned like before some of the presentations were very frequent, and then you kind of went to about one a month. Is that one a month like globally, or is that like within a specific category or specific ambassador or persona?
Yeah, so it's per the different series type,
I
right?
see.
So if you think about the fact that we have the team series and we have 13 different teams, we're trying to get each one of those teams to deliver one a month, right? And then we have the location, which we're trying to get them to do one a month. And then we have our org level, which we don't do, we probably do those probably 3 or 4 a quarter.
Hmm.
Those sometimes are more than once a month, but so it adds up to where we have quite a few that are happening within the month. But if you think about the targeted audience, the individual teams are only really having one, maybe two a month, depending on how that team decides, how many the team decides to run.
Got it. Got it. And are you able to share any kind of numbers around just the number of these events that you have in a unit of time, like per quarter, per something in total?
I do. Let's see, I have that number somewhere.
Just it'd be good
um,
to understand the magnitude of this program.
yeah, I think we had well, we've had 86 events since the beginning of the year.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Right? So since the beginning of the year, we've had 86 events. Um,
Yeah, that
so
is
divided
definitely
by
quite a few.
12, and that'll give you a good average.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.